All right, let's talk about one of the most powerful essays on writing ever. We're diving into Virginia Woolf's modern fiction. Now, back in 1925, she basically published a manifesto, a call to arms, that was meant to completely shake up what a novel could be. And believe me, the shockwaves are still being felt. So what was so revolutionary about it?
So Woolf starts with this really thought-provoking question. You know how we tend to think that progress is just inevitable, that newer always means better? Well, she stops and asks, hold on a second, does that really apply to art? I mean, is a novel from the 20th century automatically better than one from the 19th? It's a great question, right?
And her analogy for this is just perfect. Think about something like a motor car. It's a straight line, right? They just keep getting faster, safer, more efficient. Clear, technical progress. But literature? Woolf says that's a totally different beast. It's more like a wandering path, maybe even a circle. It's not about getting better in the same way. It's about exploring completely new territory.
All right, so if fiction isn't just on a straight path to perfection, what was Woolf's big problem with the popular authors of her day? Well, this is where her critique really gets sharp. She basically looked at the bestsellers and said, you guys are building these incredible, perfectly constructed houses, but nobody's home.
Yeah, she had a name for them, the Materialists. And what she meant by that was that these writers were, well, obsessed with the material world, the physical stuff, the clothes, the houses, the social status, the plot mechanics. They were masters at describing the surface of life, but she felt they were totally missing what was going on inside, the spirit, the consciousness, the real human experience.
And let me tell you, she did not hold back. She called them out by name. We're talking about the literary superstars of the time, H.G. Wells, Arnold Bennett, and John Galsworthy. I mean, these weren't some obscure writers. They were the blockbusters, the prize winners. Everybody was reading their books.
But she really saved her most cutting criticism for Arnold Bennett. She even admits, look, the guy is a brilliant craftsman. She says he can build a novel that's so technically perfect, you can't find a single thing wrong with it. It's like a brand new, flawless house. And then she drops the hammer. She asks if life should refuse to live there. Wow. What good is a perfect house if it's just an empty shell?
So you see, for Woolf, the problem wasn't that these writers weren't talented. Oh no, they were incredibly skilled. The problem was what they were using that skill for. She felt they were focusing all their genius on, well, unimportant stuff. They'd build this huge, elaborate machine, this magnificent apparatus, to try and capture life. But every single time, life itself just slipped right through their fingers.
Okay, so after tearing down the old guard, Woolf moves on to an even bigger, much harder question. If those writers are getting it all wrong, then what is life really like? I mean, what does it actually feel like to be alive moment to moment? And the million-dollar question, how on earth is a novelist supposed to capture that?
Her argument is that writers are basically being held hostage. She calls it a powerful and unscrupulous tyrant, and that tyrant is convention. The unwritten rules. The tyrant says, okay, your novel needs a plot. Check. It needs some comedy, some tragedy. Check. You gotta have a love interest. Check. And make sure it all seems probable. She saw this not as a guide, but as a prison.
And this right here is the absolute core of her argument. This is the turning point. She asks two simple but totally revolutionary questions. She looks at all these well-made, predictable novels and just asks, is life like this? Must novels be like this? It's a total rebellion in just a few words. She's questioning everything.
So out of that rebellion comes something amazing. A completely new, totally radical, and honestly, a breathtakingly beautiful vision for what the novel could become. This is the moment modern fiction stops being a critique and starts being a roadmap to the future.
Okay, this quote is everything. It's probably the most famous line she ever wrote about fiction, and for good reason. She says, life is not a series of gig lamps symmetrically arranged. Forget the neat, tidy plot points all lined up in a row. Instead, she says, life is a luminous halo, a semi-transparent envelope surrounding us. It's not a straight line. It's this glowing, shimmering atmosphere we live inside of.
So what does it feel like to be inside that halo? Woolf says, just think about what your mind does on any given day. It's not some logical step-by-step process, is it? No way. It's a constant bombardment of impressions, big things, tiny things, weird thoughts, fleeting memories. She calls it an incessant shower of innumerable atoms all hitting you at once.
This really lays out the two different ways of thinking, doesn't it? On the one hand, you've got the old model, the conventional plot, those gig lamps, all neat and tidy. It's all about the outside world. And on the other, you have what Woolf wants, consciousness, that chaotic shower of atoms. It's all about the inner world. The job of the writer, she says, isn't to string up the lights anymore. It's to capture the feeling of being in that shower.
And this wasn't just some abstract theory for her. She saw writers who were already doing it. As a contrast to the materialists, she called these pioneers the spiritualists, not in a religious sense, but because they were focused on the inner life, the human spirit. And who is leading the charge? She points straight to James Joyce, and also to the incredible psychological depth of Russian writers like Anton Chekhov.
So what's the game plan? How do you actually do this? Well, according to Woolf, step 1 is a big one. You have to be brave enough to throw out the old rulebook. Ditch the conventional plot. Forget about creating characters in the old way. Then, once you've cleared the deck, the real task begins. You just record the atoms. You capture those little impressions as they hit the mind. And finally, the artistry comes in tracing the unique pattern that emerges from that seeming chaos.
And you've got to understand, this wasn't just about changing technique. It was about freedom. For Woolf, breaking those old rules meant that suddenly the novel had infinite new places it could go.
Once writers weren't chained to plot anymore, their whole focus could change. The new point of interest wasn't some big external action, it was the inner world. It was diving into the dark places of psychology, looking at all the little things that novels used to ignore. It meant embracing ambiguity instead of easy answers. And yeah, it meant creating new styles of writing that might be a little difficult, a little strange to us at first.
When you boil it all down, Woolf is saying that the hardest thing for a novelist isn't learning the rules. The real challenge is finding a way to be free from them. It's about having the guts to write about what actually fascinates you, not just what you're supposed to write about.
And this is just so liberating, isn't it? She completely smashes the idea that some topics are literary and others aren't. She just throws the doors wide open and says, guess what? The proper stuff of fiction does not exist. Anything and everything is fair game. Every little thought, every feeling, it's all the proper stuff of fiction.
And she wraps up the whole essay with this final electrifying call to arms. She says, go ahead, be weird, experiment. Nothing is forbidden. No method, no experiment, even of the wildest, with just one exception. The only real crime a writer can commit is to be fake. The only things that are truly off limits are falsity and pretense. As long as you're being honest, anything goes. And that idea, wow, it was a revolution back then. And it leaves us with a huge question for today, doesn't it? In this world where we can tell any story we want, how do we make sure we're telling the true ones? The ones that actually capture that messy, luminous, chaotic halo of what it means to be alive?